Okay, I think we can start. People might get in while I'm introducing the session. So, in this session we are introducing, again from a very high level point of view, but we hope that we'll give you all the concepts that are necessary, the notion of onboarding into the EOSC. So we assume that you followed here and there other sessions, so we're not going again to repeat what the EOSC-Core is, what the EOSC-Exchange is, but rather how the EOSC-Core services can be part of this onboarding process. So I will give an introduction and then the rest will follow with our speakers here. So this picture, these circles are actually represented let's say the onion shape that the EOSC-Core functionalities and capabilities are forming. It's one of the many views we can have. So we have the EOSC Catalogue, that is, let's say, one of the core and the centers. That is the place where the resources will be onboarded. Resources here are services and research products. So here we form the map. So we know which resources are available through the marketplace and they've been onboarded by the providers. Then we have another layer that, thanks to the fact that a pool of resources is made available, offer capabilities on top, namely accounting capabilities, so usage, monitoring, so reliability, availability, and this kind of aspects for the resources, and helpdesk for those who don't have helpdesk or can and want to integrate theirs into the EOSC. Then, as a further layer, we have what we, that was the thing. We have the EOSC interoperability framework. Again, it's an overlay on top of the resources. We have the resources, and we want to know how they are compatible and to which extent they are compatible with given interoperability frameworks like protocols, APIs, and so on. So we learn more about these resources, and we can, of course, do more since we know more about them. Then we have, on top of that, the EOSC Order Management. We have the resources, we know how they interoperate, and now we can expose providers with the functions that are necessary to sell their resources, not selling necessarily in the sense of taking money out of it, but selling the assets or the consumable assets that are behind the resources. Example, computing through a service that offers computing. Then, as a final extent, of course, we have all the discovery mechanisms that are necessary, and also the mechanisms that are necessary to acquire the resources from the end user point of view, so the EOSC Marketplace and the EOSC Explorer. Now, the whole idea is the one that we are sharing also from the community perspective through our catalogs, integrating into the EOSC catalog, Resource Catalog and Marketplace to provide search, find, discovery capabilities, reuse the resources to both other communities and to SMEs, also to the industry, for example. So this is the first benefit that we find when we onboard resources. How to onboard, we'll learn it in the following session. So the data model, this is, I promise, is the only techie slide that I have. It's not even too techie. As I mentioned before, are services and research products, and we also have a strong notion of providers. So we want to know who's the provider behind the service. This is key. So during the onboarding process, this is another aspect that we need to take into account. Then this will allow us, once we have the catalog, to associate every service that we have to a provider, right? And this is extremely important. So we have companies like Terra2, we have infrastructures like EGI, we have communities like CESDA, CESDA catalog, and the original one. We can, of course, find and navigate through the research products because we are building this network. So from a paper, we can fly to the research data, we can move to the software, we can move to the underlying services. So that's another important aspect. We can report to funders. So another added value of the onboarding is the fact that once your resources are onboarded into the EOSC Resource Catalogue, this will be visible through many other services, from the Commission portal for reporting to Scival, Scopus, ORCID, and of course our services for Discovery, Marketplace, and Explore. Accounting instead is a different thing, which offers another added value to providers in the sense that we are trying to make the usage of services transparent to the rest of the world, and also making it a way to assess and discover the services through the catalog. So if your service is providing KPIs about the usability, I don't know, depending on the kind of services, it could be number of users, number of accesses, number of hits on the APIs, whatever you have, consumed resources, bandwidth, whatever. This is a way to measure the usage of your service. And this is also one of the, let's say the new rules about the commission, so how to report the usage of services and get funded about it. So we are trying to make this transparent and of course available for others to form transparency and to offer transparency, but also to shape up discovery services, for example, or even assessment. Monitoring is along the same line, but rather than tracking usage, we are tracking availability in different forms. So you can imagine a service has been online and available, but also its components to be online and available. And it's nice to hear about this and to have ways to select or choose a service with respect to another, depending on the availability. Helpdesk is finally the final, let's say, cherry on the cake. We wanted to also offer Helpdesk on demand to those who don't and cannot support it, but also to offer a channel from the EOSC to the local Helpdesk services when these exist. So we are, and you will see, offering many ways of doing this through the core, the EOSC-Core. So my part is done, so this is the agenda. As you can see, it's quite dense. We have many speakers, they're all very good, and I begged them to stay on time. I'm not taking any questions now. We'll save the questions for our speakers. So the first one is George Papastefanatos with the onboarding services. We go with the first part with the two onboarding, so how to onboard actually the resources, and then the second part where we are discussing the core capabilities. Thank you, George.
Okay, thank you, Paolo. So, thank you for being here in this session. I will go through the onboarding of services in EOSC and the main functionality that's offered to providers to onboard services and other type of resources. So this is, let's say, a bird's eye view of what a user coming from an organization that acts as a provider can do to onboard resources in the service catalog. We consider that a provider user can be either an individual provider representing an organization, or let's call it a catalog owner representing a community or external catalog. They can follow more or less the same path, but actually they play a different role in the service catalog. An individual provider can register an organization, a service, or different types of services like a data source, and they manage all these resources coming from the same organization in the same catalog, in the resource catalog. A catalog owner actually registers a catalog which in turn can manage not only resources but also providers that are part of this community, of this catalog. They follow the path and they usually use the API to do this onboarding. The individual provider can do the same thing through the API or the web interface of the EOSC portal of the EOSC provider. The API is also can also be used not only by the other components of EOSC platform, but also by external catalogs and thematic regional catalogs to retrieve services and resources that are maintained in the catalog. So, if you are an individual provider representing an organization, the steps that you can follow is you can log in, you must log into the provider's portal, and through the AAI service of the EOSC portal, agree to the rules of participation, and the first thing you should do is to fill in the information according to the provider's profile. This is, let's say, the model that we follow in EOSC to describe providers and resources. EPOT, the, let's say, onboarding team, validates and checks whether the information is according to the requirements and to the provider's profile, and then approves the registration of the provider. Then you can submit your first resource, your first service, according to the schema, to the model that is described in the service profile. The same goes for this information, and then you are part of the EOSC providers list. What you can do next is to start onboarding, registering more services, or you can start using the dashboard. There are a lot of different actions that you can perform, and your service and providers information becomes available in the marketplace, in the public EOSC catalog. EPOT will come to you again to review the information submitted, and may propose, suggest some, let's say, improvements in your record to improve your visibility. The same goes if you are a provider of a data source. Data source you can consider is a special kind of a service that contains research products like publication datasets and other types of research products. It is more or less the same process. The data source onboarding also allows the provider to either fill in from scratch the information or reuse information for open air for filling in the data of a data source, of a repository. For the catalog onboarding, as I said before, the catalog actually is, you onboard the catalog which actually can manage providers and resources, not only resources. You should follow the same path. You register the catalog, but then you can use the API to manage your resources and your providers in the EOSC catalog. Using the API actually allow to, and you should be responsible for the validation of your resources. And what we have done is that we do not allow users to change the information that is provided by external catalog. So if you're a catalog owner, you should comply to the rules of participation representing a catalog in the EOSC portal. There is an extended functionality for all resources. As Paolo said before, providers can specify endpoints for monitoring, for helpdesk, for ordering, and information that actually extends and makes services and resources interoperable with other core services. Users also from providers can see metrics related to monitoring, to helpdesk, for instance, how many tickets have been issued related to this resource, or the timeline, whether the service was up and running, related to the monitoring statistics in the provider dashboard. So the provider dashboard is the, let's say, the place, the single place for providers to view everything about their service portfolio. They can, of course, register new services, new data sources. They can change the existing information. They can put new services as draft, activate, deactivate, view statistics. Everything you should do in your records can be done through the dashboard. For onboarding using a REST API, again, there is a different part if you come as an individual provider or as an external catalog, but essentially you use the same API calls. If you are an individual provider, you should first log in, you should first become a provider, and then you can get an API token from the AAI service of the EOSC portal that you can use to authenticate yourself in every API call. If you are external catalog, the same, let's say, authentication mechanism, you should follow the same authentication mechanism, but now you can actually push, update information about not only resources, but also about providers. And this is, let's say, the different functionality that's offered through the API. There are get methods, post methods, put methods, even delete methods that you can use, and all of these methods are documented in the EOSC portal API, the documentation. So I will close with some benefits that we consider for providers. First of all, we think that the visibility of the EOSC Resource Catalogue and the publication of these resources in the EOSC Explorer and Marketplace, all resource providers gain extended visibility for all types of resources, services, data sources, catalogs, research product. You can reach a wider audience, especially if you are a community provider, a catalog from a community. The information now is part of a wider catalog, and all the management is performed seamlessly through the APIs. We do not support only services. Now we have more capabilities to extend and support data sources and research products. And we offer added value functionality for integrating functionality for monitoring, helpdesk, order management to your resources. And for service users, the users actually can follow the interoperability relationships that will be part of the resources and services to find new products and facilitate the use of resources. Users can find more services now. I think this is the big advantage from EOSC catalog or non-EOSC catalogs, external catalogs, to a main, let's say, a single portal. And there is a one-stop research shop that user can discover and access a wide variety of EOSC resources. And of course, we have support and we have metrics for providers to view the, let's say, usage of the resources by users. So what is the road ahead? For the next month in EOSC Future, we plan to expand the type of resources that we offer, and we plan to, let's say, complete the integration of more third-party catalogs, external catalogs, community and regional ones in the EOSC portal. We plan to put, let's say, ways to improve the quality of the resources that are now provided in the EOSC portal, to implement procedures to improve the quality, to extend the catalog with more type of resources, for instance, from training resources, or other things that could be, let's say, part of a uniform catalog. We will implement the interoperability guidelines. I think there are a lot of sessions that describe the plans for implementing these guidelines and be part of the catalog. And finally, to extend functionality in APIs and in the UIs to support the interoperability guidelines for providers to let's say, during onboarding, to define what is compatible or compliant with these guidelines. I will stop here and give the floor to, I don't know if we have questions or... After, okay, I will give the floor to Andreas to provide more details about the research product onboarding.
Thank you, George. So, as we heard, interoperability is the key, and I will go through some steps and show you some alignments that we have at the moment currently, so it would be extend. First of all, I will go to the landscape of research products as we see. Paolo also mentioned the different research products. We have literature, we have data sets, software, other research products at the moment, and additional things. You see here the different types of resource types that we have in this landscape, and we discover these ongoing, so in periodical way. what are the resource types that we found in repositories. And what are the repositories that we found these resource types? Mostly institutional thematic repositories or literature, journal publishers, data repositories, of course, software repositories, other research product that this is the other ones, and and the last one is CRIS systems, the current research information systems. And now, if we take a closer look to this landscape, we see that the institutional and thematic repositories have mostly literature, data sets, software, and other research products at the moment. Data repositories have data sets, of course, and other research products have mostly data sets and patents, workflows, interactive data management plans, and so on. And last but not least, the CRIS systems have all kind of these resource types in their system and could provide information on these. So, what are the steps at the moment? I don't repeat anything that George has. What is important here is that the portal use the OpenAIRE catalog of data sources, which comes from Open Door, Fair Sharing, RE3 data, and will also include, I think, DRIS, the directory of research information systems. Then the steps are also presented by George here, and it would be also all going through these steps into the resource catalog, and after the onboarding process at the moment is finished of the service or of the resource, then it goes to the OpenAIRE part, which are also communicating with the registries, and we are more evaluating the endpoint, the given endpoint, regarding some guidelines. So the other steps here is after the endpoint registration is done, the validation points will be evaluated regarding our compliant level at the moment, what we have, and the research product will be harvested from this endpoint. Both validation and the harvesting will be periodical, so in a time frame that we have given. After this, the research products from this endpoint will be also available in the resource catalog. So, some steps in the actual provider portal. There's a new part to onboard the new data source as a provider. This could be happen in two ways. One way is a wholly clean way with empty forms. The other one is a fulfilled form from the OpenAIRE data sources that we have here at the moment. Here's a screenshot of the current system. This is also explained by George, which is the fields of the catalog. So there are some mandatory fields for this data source, and I will go through more. Monitoring is also one of that's also George mentioned here, and I would like to highlight that the fundamentals for onboarding a data source is a web service endpoint that is given to us, which is from which we can harvesting, and this endpoint is compliant to the OpenAIRE guidelines. Of course, this is not the whole OpenAir guidelines. This is only for literature repositories version 3, institution and thematic repositories version 4 and up, data archive, and CRIS systems. I would also like to mention here that the service endpoint and the guidelines are compliant to the ORE PMH protocols. So that's the Open Archive Initiative protocol for harvesting metadata. And I think this will be also extended in the future. The visibility is only to mention the benefits for a service provider. Is also mentioned the visibility that the research output is visible in the resource port catalog, and for the users gives this the cross-disciplinary research on different research products, and the other thing is that is also like you mentioned, the accounting on research products that we have also another talk today here. Thank you very much. I'm in time.
You are in time. Great. So, are you introducing yourself? Yeah.
Okay, hi, I would like to tell you a little bit more about the order and access management in EOSC. And the thing that is important, that from the provider perspective, this can happen after the service, both provider and the service are already onboarded. And a quick story why we might want to join it. Because from the user's perspective, and the order management was tailored with many details from the perspective of the user exactly. So we want the user to be able to define what is needed in the scope of a single project, scientific project. And there is a place for the users to be able to say these things, and they are called marketplace projects. So after creating the marketplace project, it can be either suggested or searched by the user what can be of the user interest, get support in the scope of this project, then exactly ask where it's needed to the access of chose elements in the projects, chose resources, and then if wanted have more once it was noticed that maybe it's not enough for the goals to be achieved. And now, it was presented in more details on the previous session, but in general, there are a few ways to explore what is out there for the researchers. One way is to use the catalog functionality, so the one that the providers is getting after onboarding the services or research products. And once it's being done, and it's very important from the discovery perspective, that I know that it might be tedious and there are many things that you are asked for as providers, but the more fields you fill in, the better discovery from the user perspective there might be. And once the user found something on interest and on a service level, the next step is to getting to know what exactly is available in the context of this service. And, sorry. And this is where order management kicks in. So we have something called offers, where the provider is able to express what are the different options. Sometimes the options are dependable on the type of the user that the service is able to serve. Sometimes the option is depending on the quota of a given technical capabilities. So everything is really up to the provider, because the provider is the one knowing best what are the ways of delivering the service, because in the end it's about the delivery. It's about being able to connect the user with the provider as a first step, but in the end we want to have a successful utilization of the service for the sake of making the science happen. So what's happening next? We figured out that once something has been exposed as a different offer, it would be nice to know what is exactly about that offer that makes it so special. And there are two sides of the coins for that. On one hand, you are able to see as a user what is available and make a proper choice for yourself. And on the other hand, as a provider, you are able to know what is supposed to be delivered in the end. And this is also the place where one of the places where all of the capabilities of the onboarding platform take place, because once you are asked to deliver something and you will deliver it, you should be able to tell if you have the capacity to do so. And from the monitoring perspective, for example, we can tell if the monitoring is also underpinned. We can tell the user what is the status, current status, or the history of the status of the service. And for the accounting sake, once the shaking hands take place, then the user should be able to check what amount of resources, as long as they're countable, have been already consumed on the user end. So everything comes together in the end. And this is after asking for the access, there is a dedicated view where the user can wait for the return information about what's going on with the service, if it's accepted or not, and in the end be able to use it. Right now we are having order management separately for different entities, for different resources. We have the first approach towards being able to deliver something all together. These creatures are called bundles, and we'll be talking more about them tomorrow. But in the end, we want to facilitate the possibility to compose everything that will be of interest to the user, both for the services, because not only services and data sources are a subject of the order management, but also for the research products. And now, the fun part. Benefits, obvious, it's cool, we want to have it. So the important part. How to join it. Once you onboarded the service, you can either through the provider portal or logging in to the marketplace and entering the service that is underpinned to you. You can choose something that is called manage the resource and then go for setting parameters and offers. And now, one thing is that the current capability is serving the purpose of order management, but as you can see here, this is everything that provider defines. It's in provider's hand, and there is kind of generic UI for it. Those are the main general information on the offer. So, what is the name of it? What the description, and is it asking for the order or not? Because we are separating if there needs to be an access granted or if it's done automatically, for example. And then the important part, you are able to define what is being told to the user who is discovering your service. So for example, right now, most of the providers are offering parameters about the deployment stuff. But what if you can tell right now that, for example, if you're an analytical service, what kinds of data formats you accept? This might help the user in understanding how consumable from the user perspective this service is, what types of, for example, online storage your service is supporting, if any. So all the information on one hand, letting the user know what can be offered or delivered in the end, and on the other hand, all the information you need, the providers need to deliver the service to the user in the end. And this is the summary. So yeah, once again, it's about facilitating the interaction between consumers and providers that leads to service utilization. That's the most important part, because being able to discover what is needed, it's one thing, but being able to use it, it's another thing. And there is the integration part, really quickly. Apart from participating on the central instance of a marketplace, you can also integrate if you are running your own order management system. These two possibilities are already in place. No one has gone public, not public, but in production with the integration. But we have several communities who are running their own order management system, and with the APIs at place, we are able to exchange information about the orders, and it's all for the sake of the transparency and user experience in the system. And next to come, we will be very soon incorporating the integration about accounting and monitoring. And we will try to find a way to give a support for the virtual access method of utilizing our accounting, getting access to the resources services. And what we plan until the very end of the project is the composability indicators, being able to compose and consume services together, services and research products, end-to-end workflows, but not for all of the use cases, some of them that we'll be able to integrate, and execution framework that will be a topic of tomorrow's session in the morning. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Femi Zamani from GRNet, and I'm going to have a few slides about the EOSC monitoring that was already mentioned in the previous EOSC components. I'm referring here in the presentation, and we have a few information about what is the need of a monitoring service, how it is covered, the benefits for the providers, the benefits for the user, how to use it, and an architecture picture and integration options. We're referring to providers that have already been onboarded or planning to onboard to the EOSC catalog. Before we start, I have put a few slides with the main problem we want to cover, and it's the daily life of a researcher, which is looking for services to cover its daily needs. The main steps that it follows is to search for a service based on some criteria. Then it creates a short list of services that want to check, evaluates this list of services based on questions he makes, like is this service available for download? Can I use it online? If it is online, is it available all the time? What is the cost of this service? It covers all the features I want? And then he creates a smaller list and starts using it, evaluating it, and to see if it fits his needs. But during this process of using and evaluating, things are not always like as expected. Sometimes the researcher encounters problems and faces problems like server error, a picture loading that never ends, and error 404. That is the added value of the EOSC monitoring in EOSC. No, it's not testing or evaluating the service as I mentioned in the previous slide, but what it's doing is that it's another trying to use the service. It is the key service needed to gain insights about the resources onboarded in EOSC. It is continuous, on demand, to quickly detect, correlate, and analyze data for a faster reaction to anomalous behaviors. Sorry. So the solution to this problem is to add the EOSC monitoring that continuously checks the service, and providers provide a more reliable service with better availability, and users select the service without facing unexpected service errors. So actually the EOSC enhancement two-step of evaluating and using is to check and report the status and the availability of the service in various intervals. The EOSC monitoring is trying to emulate the user behavior and monitors the service to provide real-time status reports, availability and reliability reports, and real-time alerts. It can help providers to increase the customer satisfaction and diagnose and prevent internal or user-related issues. It is a way to build a trust between the users and the new potential customers. Now that we know what is the EOSC monitoring, let's see the steps that you can follow to enable it. The idea is that when you onboard your service in the catalog, the basic monitoring is enabled by default. So it is enabled by default to all onboarded services. If you want to add a second level, let's say, more monitoring to your service, then you have to visit the provider's portal, select your service, and in the menu, enable the monitoring extension where you can add more information about what type of checks you want to do to your service. If there is no check that is available for your service, you can contact via the Helpdesk, the monitoring team, to support you. So the benefits and why to use it. We said that when you publish your service, the first step is to publish your service to the marketplace, and then automatically by default the base monitoring starts. What is base monitoring is the things that we can do to be sure that the service is available. It is a simple health check. Does your service respond in a request? This is the main questions what we do. Is the service certificate valid? So the features that we get with this basic monitoring is the alerting, real-time alerts, the reporting for the availability and reliability, and of course observability of the status, real-time. Is it up now or no? The added value is that we diagnose and prevent internal or user-related issues, and we increase also the uptime of the service. If someone wants more on provider demand, we can enable user perspective monitoring. The user perspective monitoring is based mainly on extra functionalities of your service. We discuss with the service owners and we're trying to find the main functionalities that it has so that we can check them via the monitoring. So the basic that we do is that can the user log into your service? Can the logged in user make a functionality, for example, download a file? This adds a new feature to your service where you can have better trends and better insights of the service and understand exactly how the service and how the user experience your service. And this results to increase the customer satisfaction. How I can see the result if I'm a provider? If you're a provider with either base or user perspective monitoring enabled, you can see the results via the EOSC monitoring UI, or in a few weeks, like they presented in the previous components, in the marketplace and the provider's portal, where you can get detailed information about the status, the availability and reliability results. If you are a user, you can see through the EOSC monitoring and in the next few weeks via the marketplace. A small an architectural view of the service. We created custom connectors with the provider's portal so that we can fetch the information from the source. We never replicate the information. And the result of the monitoring, because we make some computations in order to get the monitoring results, you can see it in the EOSC UI, the provider's portal, and the marketplaces which are integrated. In the EOSC monitoring service, we have 4 integration options. The first one is a monitor and onboarded service, which is the most popular. Apart from the fact that all the services are already monitored if they are onboarded, we have I think now currently 6 providers that want to add that have enabled the monitoring extension and want to use more results, to have more results about their service. We are working together to start monitoring the service by the user perspective. We have the second option of the monitoring infrastructure, which is actually a list of services that have to be added in the EOSC monitoring. The integration of external monitoring service, where we have described in a document how an external monitoring engine can send the results to the EOSC monitoring. And the third-party services exploiting EOSC monitoring data, which is an example is the EOSC marketplace and the provider's portal. And that's all for the monitoring. I continue with. I will stay here and I continue with the EOSC accounting.
Change your hat.
That's it. Now we're going to discuss again. Hi, I'm Themsa Mani from GRNet, and apart from the EOSC monitoring, we're working with the EOSC accounting team, and especially for the EOSC accounting for services. At the beginning of the project, we're going again to explain what is it, the benefits for the providers, for the user, the architecture of the service, and how to use it. So at the beginning of the project, a gap was identified that we needed to collect, aggregate, and display the virtual access metrics for the between different infrastructures, providers, and the Infra 07 projects. Actually, it was a new virtual access accounting system, like another accounting system, with extra functionalities to support the virtual access metrics. So, based on this idea, we created the Accounting for Services, which is a platform that is responsible for collecting, aggregating, and exchanging the metrics between different infrastructures, providers, and projects. The main functionalities of the service are accept input for different resources and define the metrics they are using, store these metrics in a data store, and create the necessary environment to search, filter, and offer this data via a specific period of time via an API and a UI. And our next functionality that we're thinking is to be able to aggregate this data and to offer this aggregated data to several clients. So the accounting for services is comprised of two different components. The first one is the API. The main functions of the service are expressed via this REST API. It supports all the different resources we need to support this system: the project, the provider, the installation, the metric definitions, and the metrics. It is a well-documented API. You can see all the details in the URL we have in the presentation, and it's based on it follows the OpenAPI specification. We have created this API with scalability and high availability in mind, and currently in the beta version, the service has 2 instances, I think, of API, so as to support the load that we have from the clients. The other part is the UI. It is something that it's a work in progress for now. We have a few features available. It supports the management of the different resources, the project, the providers, and the installations. And via this UI, you can view details of all these different resources, filter, and browse from one project to another. In order to have access to this UI, you must be authenticated, and that is why both the API and the UI are integrated with the EOSC AAI. People participating in this EOSC accounting for this service are GRNet, CNRS, STFC, and OpenAir, where GRNet developed the API and CNRS the UI, and the OpenAir team was there to test all the functionalities we have created and the schema that we have. At the same time, we invited some infra-EOSC projects to validate the API and the UI and the functionalities. And the OpenAir Nexus and DICE was the ones that we used to validate the data they have. The benefits for the providers are that it provides a unified, generic way to expose the metrics of a service, and they can see the usage and the impact by the EOSC users can see the usage and the metrics. It provides a generic way to expose the user of each service per project, provider, and service. And finally, for the end users, they can see the user of the services per all these different resources we have: project, provider, and resources. So the architectural picture again is that we have created a few custom connectors to get data from the other components of EOSC, like the EOSC Explorer for the projects. We don't allow the users to rewrite the information about the projects, but we get it from all the information needed from EOSC Explorer. And for the providers, we get the information we need from the provider's portal. The service is integrated also with the EOSC AI, and the information is ready to be integrated. We have our own UI, and we're ready to integrate with the provider's portal and the marketplace. And how you can use it? If you are an infra EOSC project, you can start describing your different resources, like the project, the provider, the installation, and the metrics definition, and upload the values in the EOSC Accounting for Services. The EOSC Accounting for Services is also integrated with EOSC Explorer and Catalog, and we are working currently in sending the data from the EOSC Accounting for Services to the EOSC Catalog and to correlate with the service and the EOSC Marketplace. That's all from me.
Hello, I'm giving the next presentation on behalf of Dimitris Pierakos, who couldn't be here today. That's the other side of the moon, the accounting for resource products. We are providing accounting for services and for resource products. In this case, the accounting for resource products acts as a sort of aggregator. So we are expecting the original sources to capture information events about usage of the products with any sort of PIDs. So we support, we are agnostic from the PIDs. So we have the DOIs, you can have the archive identifiers, the UK PMC handles, whatever. The kind of indicators, measures that we're going to catch are the downloads and views. And with respect to all resource products out there, so publications, datasets, and software. To be clear, a view is when you enter any search portal, and through the list of results that you get after your query, you select one and you open a splash page. That's a view. That's a sign of interest with respect to a specific product. The download goes by itself, so it's when you press the button and you download the actual file. So these are important elements to build an assessment and also discovery infrastructure for science. It's based on open standards and protocols, so we're not reinventing the wheel. So the interoperability frameworks behind, if you are the owner of a data source, the provider of a data source are rather standard, so you're implementing something that others are doing, not something specific. And as a result, what we do is to, of course, offer aggregated results. Okay, so the idea is that we collect downloads and events from different sources, and we bring them together into for one object to form an aggregation and a surrogate. The service is powered by the OpenAir Users Count service, but it's integrated into the resource catalog. So how can you do that? There are two ways of doing this. So if you are operating a repository or an archive, you can do this in two ways, by push and by pull. So by push is when you are, let's say, registered to an infrastructure. So you use a Matomo environment. So from your side, every time an event occurs, you not only keep it in a log, but you send it out to the service, to the central infrastructure. The other way around, which is typical as an interaction between the EOSC accounting for resource products and others who are doing the same activity, and so having similar services, I can mention many, Make Data Count is behind this, is a pull workflow. It's where we are collecting already aggregated data to form further aggregations on our side. So, as a fact sheet, what is important to know is that the statistics about usage activity of research products are integrated into the resource catalog. So the resource catalog shows the numbers, the actual numbers related with every single object. The other thing that you have to take into account is that we do a sort of double aggregation process, because we collect events at the level of the individual PID, but then in the graph we are merging, so deduplicating the objects, which may have different persistent identifiers, for example, but are the same. For example, a publication in UK PubMed often has a corresponding publication with the DOI coming from a journal. These two objects may be uploaded in different repositories with different persistent identifiers. So we collect the events for both identifiers, and in the graph we bring them together thanks to the deduplication. So we do a double effort, let's say double layered aggregation. As you can see, we are based on standard and technologies, provision of counter codes of practice. We also provide statistics reports via Sushi Lite, which is another standard that is designed exactly for that. So everything that we do is available through these APIs. And what is important is that these numbers are one of the many indicators that we all believe should be used to assess science in the future. So we should not rely on a single one as we have been used to do, and unfortunately we are still basing our assessment and evaluation based on those indicators known as the impact factor, basically. But we should have many more and visualize our activities from different perspectives. So this is actually one of the indicators that we are certainly including and making available for that reason. The benefits for data source providers is that we have this umbrella system that provides information on the overall impact of a data source, because a data source can collect, of course, the downloads and views about all its products, and therefore have a sort of total. So from this download, we had this total number of downloads and this total number of views. For research product providers, of course, this provides an aggregated view on the statistics about the interest that the world has shown with respect to their products. So also the authors are rather interested in that. Personally, I provided, for example, in one of the recent selections in my institution, the numbers about the downloads and views of the data sets and the software that my group we have produced. So how to do it? And how to find instructions following the path that George and Andreas have already described. Once you register and onboard a data source, you will land in OpenAir Provide, and from there, since you are the owner of data source, you can find all the instructions and the elements that are needed to onboard the data source into this accounting for resource products mechanism. And you will find also, of course, the technical support from Dimitris, who's unfortunately not here again. And that's it. Oh, right, a few numbers. This is what is already available today. We have about 6.5 million research products for which we have the reporting, for a total of 300 million views and 810 million downloads. If I well recollect, I think we have more than 200 data sources today integrated. So ask your institutions to do it, because this is very important. And that's it. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Pavel Weber. I'm working at KIT, and I will talk about EOSC Helpdesk, starting with a short introduction. So the Helpdesk is one of the major services in the modern infrastructures, and it provides instant communication channel for the users. It also facilitates the support for the customers and enables stable operation for the infrastructures. But nowadays, Helpdesk is a bit more than just a service which accumulates the tickets and basically facilitates the resolution of these tickets. It's all about how to communicate, how to assist, how to co-create the value. I will say a few words about the Helpdesk architecture, describing the components relevant to the EOSC infrastructure. So without going too much into details, so we have multiple ways we can offer to user to submit the tickets. The user can choose the most suitable way. The main capabilities are in the Helpdesk back office. So the helpdesk back office contains dashboards, support groups, smart search engine, escalation procedure, customizable notifications, etc. And helpdesk also provides itself as a service for communities to integrate. It also provides the possibility for integration with community help desks via the REST API. Talking about the benefits for providers, so taking this major scenario where the help desk is provided as a service for the providers. So the providers basically benefit from all the features the help desk contains, and at the same time providers still working in the isolated environment, managing the requests from the users, and also providing multiple ways, as I mentioned before. So in this way the provider can focus better on the support activities rather than on the service hosting and administration. So here on the picture you see schematically support groups. Basically this is the area which providers can control and manage, and there are other areas which belong to other providers. To bring all together, we can define basically three main integration scenarios. It's a direct usage, so the help desk as a service, the ticket redirection, which is the simplest integration way, where the ticket is basically redirected to the help desk of the community, and the full integration, where the community already has the help desk, and it's just matter of integration, so that to synchronize tickets in both systems. So the both help desks will be synchronized, and that the tickets are basically can be visible in both systems. I think I will skip that one. So this is basically the information about what provider could get, all capabilities which I mentioned, including the custom workflows integration with external messengers like, for example, Telegram, Slack, Rocket Chat, etc. And I come to the benefits for users. So the help desk provides the knowledge base which can be used to enable the self-service for the users. And also the users get the instant communication channel. In this way, the user can get basically improved help desk experience and get better quality of support. And instead of desperately looking for help for communication channels, the user can focus on their main tasks. A few words about onboarding integration procedure. So what are the steps? The steps are quite simple. Just you could start with the documentation and choose the integration option. After that you can send initial request using multiple ways listed here, and after that we will come to the implementation phase after we set up the several parameters and configuration for the integration. My almost last slide is about status of the help desk. So currently we have already integrated multiple communities. Multiple communities are in implementation phase, and so far we have over 300 registered users and 60 agents. The numbers are not so big, but we have to take into account that we're running it since half of the year. And to look in future, so it's quite simple, the next steps. So this is so we will focus on integration of more communities. We will try to provide more customization for the capabilities for the communities, that they can customize and configure their areas as they want. And to enable these steps, we have of course to analyze the requirements and yes, and implement them. So this is our vision, where we have distributed system of the support channels across the EOSC. And with that, I will end my presentation. Thank you.
Amazing. Okay, so I hope this was as fast as clear. We have half an hour, so we can ask plenty of questions, and I hope you have many. Who's the first to go?
It was so clear.
1, 2, 3. Okay. Try to click all the buttons that you find.
Now? Yes.
Okay, yes.
Hi, Uli Bundke from Forschungszentrum Jülich. I'm part of the ENVI community. And we are trying to get on board the ENVI catalog of services here. Andreas, you have shown for the service that there's a constraint on the service itself, that it has to follow the open air routes. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? Because we have many services, and I'm pretty sure they are not compliant.
Yes, I'm fully aware of this. We are talking also with Keith, Jeffrey regarding this, and make a roadmap. How can we onboard research products from ENVI Hub into open air, into research product catalog? And we have different ways for this one. As you know, Keith Jeffrey is formerly co-creator of the Zarif format. So Zarif is also mentioned in our quiz guidelines. So that could be one way. The other way is we have not only ORE PMH endpoints that we could harvest it from, but this is already mentioned, or this is mentioned in the guidelines. So we have 24 collectors around. So we have the possibility to onboard your research products.
Maybe just a question to the, for example, an API. Is there also special requests for these APIs? So research infrastructures has to change their services to be compliant with this, to be ingested. Sorry for the wrong word. Ingested to the or onboarded on the ENVI on the EOSC service.
If you mean APIs as application programming interface, that could this is broad. Could be give a lot of information and is so many customized on the side of research clusters or anything else. And we have the possibility to collect from REST APIs research products also, and we do it already. And we will see in the discussion with Keith is leading here what could be done in this phase.
Yeah, and I would add something probably not very well received, and sorry for that, but I'm not sorry really, because I think that this is where the fun begins. We are trying to deliver a platform that is as general as possible and follows the good practices and standards from the communities around, but the communities, as it was said several times, the EOSC is about integrating the infrastructures and communities, and it means that there is some work to be done in the communities and infrastructures themselves to be able to integrate with each other and integrate with the platform. I know that it may be not the best thing to say, but everyone needs to make effort at some point. I'm not saying that everyone needs to redefine their APIs, because as said, we are trying to make the solutions as general and as customizable for everyone as possible, but sometimes there is some work needed to be done in order to integrate and provide more value with the integrations behind us.
And again, we are investing in not me. We are investing in standards. Okay, so it's we already have 2,000 data sources because we are using standards. Okay, so we're not trying to come up with a new one. If you take a look at the guidelines, they're based on DataCite, which is very common, widely used, and I bet that some of the sources that you have may already have decided to go in that direction because it's embedded in many platforms that are used for data archiving. The guidelines are embedded in the software of many of these platforms. So if you use Dataverse, for example, out of the box, you're integrated with the EOSC. If you use DSpace, ePrints, all these have implemented modules for that. So then, if not, of course, it's always possible to have the technical support needed to map onto what we have. But it's not, say, rocket technology. So it's something that can be done for the goods that Roxana underlined. There were other two questions.
Mine was a silly one, just to start the conversation because everyone was shy. I was wondering why you had more downloads than views. Don't remember who showed that, like done the monitoring, I think.
Because many of the downloads, this is a nice question. For example, it's the same for every data set that we are publishing. Most of this information comes from data sets, not for publication, but also for publications. And what happens is many services are downloading directly the file. So these actions are registered not because of a user going through a catalog, but because services are downloading it. There's a very nice example, which is the set of research-funded products that we are exposing through the graph, which has been viewed like 2,000 times and downloaded 50,000, I think, times, because services out there are downloading and building, of course, their own services and innovation around it. They don't go through the portal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So Marco Molinaro, Italian National Institute for Astrophysics. I've seen you have service and data source onboarding now, and you already said, I think, that there is a way, or there will be a way to make relationships among the various resources that you have into your onboarding system. So besides composability, that I think is not a matter here, do you have plans on what kind of relationships you will be dealing with there? I mean, do you have patterns for that, or will it be simply A relates to B and relates is generic?
Whatever, you can try.
So we already have relationships. We have about 4.6 billions, roughly, and these have semantics where semantics is available. Of course, these are relate services to products. For example, this product is contained into this service, or the metadata of this product is available from this service. But we also have relationships between the objects. For example, a publication is supplemented by a data set and the software, or in some cases is part of, we rely on DataCite's classification. We tend to normalize it because it's even too descriptive as an ontology, but that's what we have. And others will follow because not all are captured. So.
And of course, can I just?
Yes.
I'm afraid with this. Okay. And what I just, the fact that we're planning to put, let's say, the relationship of a service or of a resource to an interoperability guideline means that we create some implicit relationships between resources that actually comply with certain guidelines, and then a user can reuse this information. This will be, I think, up and running in the coming weeks. Okay.
I think we have the one.
Yeah. I just need to make a clarification.
Okay.
So apart from having relationships between data sets and data sources, so there are relationships also between the services, other types of resources that are part of the catalog. So you can, so now we are adding this label of horizontal services, also adding which is the kind of infrastructure that is offering one of the different services. And in the future, we will have also the connection with the integrations between core resources and EOSC-Exchange resources that are the ones in the EOSC Catalogue and Marketplace. So I think he raised the hand for the next question. Or I don't know who was first. Do you mind, Matai?
Yeah, sure.
I raised my hand here in my silent corner for a while until Andreas had some mercy on me. So Andreas, you showed something that was very typical. You chose a screenshot from your own institution. And I think this is something that we usually do when we're part of such larger infrastructure projects, that we clean up the records of our own institution. And so the question is, and then when you mentioned Dataverse and DSpace, in my head it went like tick, 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 yeah, we have all this, great. But then I asked myself, I'm coming from a larger research-driven university, and would I be able to say, yeah, this is how we should be visible in the EOSC? I would probably not. And the question is there help to understand your own use case as a research performing organization? Because I can't really do a clever and smart onboarding if I don't understand my own use case. And the use case for a university or a research performing organization could be different, or could be maybe they need to first understand, are we an individual registering services, or are we actually a catalog provider ourselves? So the question is really, is there help on understanding your own use case if you're a large organization and you want to be part of the EOSC in the best way?
Regarding our own institution that you see in Bielefeld University Library, I don't have access to any test data, so I make it with the screenshots from our own organization. So we don't have at the moment onboarded and resource like our repository or journal platform and so on. Currently, we only onboarded a service called OpenAPC that we are offering to the community, and also the BASE, the Bielefeld Academic Research Engine. So at the moment, I cannot say I test this with our own repository.
May I compliment? Yes, I think I was going, but you.
So, as part of the onboarding activity within the EOSC onboarding, EOSC portal onboarding team, we provide support to service providers to better understand what we request to them. And one of the typical questions we have when someone wants to onboard a service provider is, do I have to onboard, for example, as a service provider, the entire university or a laboratory or a department or something like that? And in such cases, we try and discuss with the service provider what are the real needs. Of course, it's not up to us to decide, but we can provide a minimal support for this. Obviously, things are different for the products, as Andreas was saying before, but we try and provide the support we can to help providers understand what is better for them, but their decision is the ultimate decision.
I would only like to add that there is not only one good answer. Depending on from our perspective of the user-centric people, it's very often good to think about what you are offering. When you know answer to this question, it becomes a little bit more clear what is that you want to onboard, in fact. Like what are your capabilities of the delivery, what you can deliver, a single node, or maybe an access to a platform as a service somewhere. And knowing that, it gives you a little bit more knowledge about knowing. But yeah, I think that Luciano and the team is trying it. We are making this more organically right now. There is no generalized procedure to help people on board because there is simply no resources to do so. But if anyone asks question, it's not left unanswered. So yeah.
So, and let me add also on this. After the onboarding of data sources in EOSC, it's going to the open-air provide, as we said. And then we have also Helpdesk to support the repository manager or CRIS managers that provide this endpoint to get compliant with our guidelines, or we found solutions to harvesting from.
Yes, and there is a validator as well that helps in the process. So it's a service that taking an endpoint of your service, collects all the metadata that you have, and gives you back a report on what you're supposed to fix to become compliant. This is really helpful in general because you get a score of, let's say, compliance, but you also get the very specific issues that you need to solve. So this vocabulary is not aligned, and this format is not correct, and so on. So you can, going through it, learn the process.
Anyway, so the main. Okay, awesome. So from the top level, so your main point of contact to ask these kind of questions is the EOSC portal onboarding team. So they are the ones that you can contact, and then they can help you to assess which is the kind of resources that you would like to onboard. We have different procedures depending on the kind of resource that needs to be onboarded, and this is where we will add others like trainings very soon. And I think that now.
For the not working microphone.
Yeah. Okay. The data sources you said at the beginning of this diagram was that you source or populate or pre-populate from various registries like Area 3 data, fair sharing, and so on. But does that mean that all the data sources? Yeah, exactly. That's the next one. Or sorry, the two previous 29.
29. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And so does it mean that the data sources that you find in, let's say, Area 3 data, then are automatically being harvested, or somebody has to claim the data provider, or the provider of the data source has to claim them, and so that you start to harvest them, or when is it being harvested?
So for the first step, it is that the formula that you find in the provider portal will be filled out with these information from Re3 data or Open Door fair sharing. So in the next step, in step 5, is this data source provided an endpoint, and we could evaluate and validate these endpoints regarding the guidelines and harvesting from it if the metadata quality is sufficient.
Thank you. And just sort of follow up, what is the relation between the data sources in Explore EOSC and Explore OpenAir? Or is it like in OpenAir has how many more data sources, right? And
so there, we are collecting from different registries, different data sources. One is the EOSC Service Catalogue. So we have the EOSC Service Catalogue, fair sharing, Open Door, Re3 data. We bring them in one place, we deduplicate, we build records that are as non-ambiguous, let's say, as possible. And for that, we have one identifier and all the identifiers coming from the different sources. So we're actually keeping aligned the EOSC and the local catalog that we have, which is supposed to contain everything, okay? So as a user, you can register where you want the first time, and then when you come to provide, you can fetch your own record of a data source as a profile. The suggestion is to register where you're supposed to be registered. So if you're an institutional repository, to go to Open Door, Re3 data. But if you've done it twice, 3 times, we're trying to put the information together.
Sorry, I was misunderstood, I think. I mean, there is this Explore OpenAir, the OpenAir catalog, which is, I don't know, 130 million objects, and then there is now this search, the EOSC portal search thing.
Okay, yes.
So, and there is quite a mismatch there.
Okay, yeah, that's in a distinction. So the EOSC marketplace gives you access and search to all the resources that have been onboarded. So they went through the workflow that George suggested or told us, or Andreas. This is then connected to the global map of science, which is the full graph, so the EOSC knowledge graph that combines products and services and includes, of course, everything, because you want to have the marketplace in a context where you can understand which are the connections with the other objects for usability, navigation, and blah, blah, and so on. So we needed to have the full map in order to provide usefulness to the marketplace alone, because otherwise you would not have search into there alone. Because this is a question that has been asked several times. Probably we should work more on the communication, because it's not easily graspable, probably.
So these research products, are they directly registered in the EOSC portal by a user?
No, they're via data sources. So scientists store their stuff in data sources.
So as an example for software, how is that going to work? Is there going to be some kind of integration between GitHub and the EOSC platform?
Oh, that's indirect. So the concept is researchers should store, preserve their outputs where they're supposed to be stored, which are the repositories, archives, data repositories, software repositories, whatever they are. They should do it according to open science practices. Placed in an object in GitHub is not an open science practice, it's the beginning. So you should put it there. Then you should have, let's say, a published version of this, citable versions in many ways. So you can do that nicely in a GitHub if you follow certain practices, because many repositories out there are offering you the chance to upload this object and obtain a DOI for it. Zenodo is one example. Many others are in the queue now. So if you follow this process, then you have a published object in GitHub which can be used by others, whose versions are kept up to date under a DOI, and you can cite the DOI. Then there are other practices, of course. You can cite a GitHub object, but in general it's rather dangerous because it may disappear. So GitHub is not supposed to be there forever. Okay, so follow the archiving, which is software heritage, for example. Software heritage offers archiving for software, so you can go to software heritage and have your specific repository in GitHub, Bitbucket, whatever, name one, be preserved forever and kept up to date. It's very simple. It's a very simple procedure. So we are able, from the OpenAIRE, we are integrated with software heritage to keep track of that. Okay. From OpenAIRE, and therefore the EOSC, because the graph, the products, is integrated.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have my private microphone. So, Andreas, you mentioned, you didn't actually mention it, but it was on your slide that journals and publishers will also be a data source. And when we just talked about research products, you said publications will sit in repositories. Yes, this is what they should be sitting in. But often this is not where they are sitting, because researchers think it's enough if I've published it. And so how do we get the publishers and the journals as a data source in there that are not going the best way, which means through the repositories or through the current research information systems?
Just clarifying, it included publishers and sites. So I just said repositories, but there are many different data source types, and one is publishers archive and journals archives. So we include those as data sources.
And some of the publishers are already making available the
questions, do they make themselves included?
Andreas.
So we have a lot of publishers that are offers an OAI PMH endpoint that we could harvesting from. So and that's the way that we are talking about. If the publishers have one or more journals, so we could also aggregate from these one endpoint all journals. That's the current status at the moment. So,
and when they're open access, what is good is that we can download their files and we use them for mining. So we have close to 15 million now PDFs because of that, because they make them available and we can download them.
Okay, last one. Anyone?
That's a hidden.
I have just a short question because I'm just trying to understand this. If I look here at this slide, there is a number of sources like fair sharing, R3 data, but they, as far as I found, looked at it, they just list repositories so that you find that there is a repository. How is it, can you also go and search within the repositories from the EOS platform? Is it possible? Because how does it work? Because, or how do I go that can I go into the repositories?
So the answer is yes. So if you, so the process is I onboard a data source. When I'm onboarding a data source, it implies that all its products, the metadata about their products, it becomes part of this graph. So I have all the metadata records in a data source, part of the graph. So I can search through these records, and I can also search through their special view of being part of a data source. So I can collect statistics at the data source level, for example. I can aggregate user statistics for the products at the data source level, and yes. So it's possible. If you take a look at the graph, each data source has its own page with the publications, research data, statistics about it, and all this sort of stuff. What, Pedro? Go ahead.
No, because the directories are here just as an entry point. So the data, open door, fair sharing are considered directories, authoritative directories to onboard in OpenAir, and will be relevant to the onboard on EOSC because they have IDs for the data sources that we can reuse internally. But the directories are mentioned that we are not harvesting from the directories. We are, so they are registered in the directories and we use that information. This was, I think, what you asked.
Not sure it's visible from here. Yes, it's connected. So if you go through services and data sources and you pick one from which we are collecting, let's say filtering by 3.0, we should be able to find them. No, because these are not in the EOSC catalog. Wait a second. Okay, institutional, it's fine.
So in the meantime, if you have a research product onboarded in the resource catalog, you have all the provenance information of this research product there. So we are collecting from many data sources and deduplicate all this information, and you have the provenance and see from which data source come which research product.
Not sure we have statistics.
Could take a look to each data source that provides this information to us.
So we also have the related data sources. We have the this is the summary. So basically, you have the publications, 274, and other kinds of resource products. So they don't provide data sets or software. But this is, you can find this for all data sources out there. And these are the aggregated users counts for this data source, who's not providing, is not integrated for accounting with us, and we are only collecting therefore the views from OpenAir, which is an eligible data source for research, for statistics about usage, views and downloads. There are better ones, so B2 Share should be there.
Okay, so I think that it's time for a break.
Okay.
Otherwise, we are going to miss everyone. I understand. So thank you so much for attending, and thank you for the speakers for being so sharp on time, especially. It's a big effort, so thank you, everyone.
Thank you.